The failure to act with sufficient ambition to avert the climate catastrophe will be the greatest moral failure of our time.
Making changes takes courage, and if we don't change things, we won't have a future.
We need a president who respects science, who understands that the damage from climate change is already here.
You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. Change is coming, whether you like it or not.
Zero Carbon
News Talk. Hello and welcome to Zero Carbonista Series 2, The Manifesto. I'm Ian Collins. I think you probably know how this works by now. The driving force behind the whole thing is the accidental businessman that is Dale Vince, or the environmentalist, I guess would be the better title. Each week we delve into those big green-based issues, the kind of stuff you should be hearing government ministers discuss on a daily basis, but for some reason seems absent from their big crib sheet. Dale, morning to you.
Yeah, morning, Ian. We've had a good week, haven't we?
We've had an incredible week, a really interesting week. Lots going. I mean, there's loads to discuss this morning as well.
Yeah, tons. Yeah, and we were just chatting off air about your week of vegetarianism, actually.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been fantastic because I like food. I'm a foodie. Some people eat food because they have to just. My mum was like that. I need a sandwich because I've got to stay alive. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, eat to live. I'm like that.
Eat to live. Yeah, and like just grab it and eat it and retain the living status of being a human being. But actually, I like the stuff and I like mucking around with food and experimenting and the like. And I've never ever needed swaying on the arguments of the health benefits of not eating meat. That to me is just a fact of life. That's a given. And anyone who tells you otherwise is just a stone cold liar, basically. However, what it does do, of course, it just makes you a little bit more ambitious with food. I think you start thinking about it. And vegetables, I'm a big I love green beans, I love broccoli, I love asparagus, all that kind of stuff, and it just tastes 100-fold better.
Yeah,
when you're not eating the other stuff.
Yeah, and sugar as well. We were talking about that, weren't we? When you don't eat sugar, your taste buds actually become alive to the sweetness of carrots, for example, which you lose when you drown it out with artificial sugar.
I saw a thing. I was talking to a fellow once about the making of a carton of orange juice, because you think, well, they can't all. How does every carton taste the same? That's impossible. If I squeeze pure oranges into a glass, no two glasses taste quite the same. They're just a little different, some stronger, some weaker, some fruitier. But of course, the big orange juice manufacturers, and there's a multi-billion-pound business right there, they just lob a flavor, what are they called, a flavor stick or something, into the system. So what you essentially just get is an instant explosion of sucrose into your gob, and that then connects to your brain and says, you're satisfied now, you've got sweetness.
Yeah, that's what processed food is all about, isn't it? Drowning our taste buds in excitement, whether it's sugar, fat, or salt. They're the three key ingredients of all processed food, and they make good food, normal food, taste boring, which is a bit of a crime, I think.
Yeah, completely, and an utter waste as well. We'll come on to some other food elements in a few moments, but let's just have a look. It's been an interesting week for the government, haven't we? I mean, we can talk about Matt Hancock and David Cameron and the like, but Boris Johnson, too cozy with vested interests to take action on climate change, something we probably, dare I say, already knew.
Yeah, I guess we did, and in a way, it kind of is a good explanation for this this disconnect between what the government says and what the government does. So, Johnson talks a good game about climate change and that kind of stuff. He unveiled his 10-point plan, which didn't seem to have a lot of point, for example, and recycles a few spending pledges, which are tiny compared to the spending on conventional stuff. And he stands aside while a new coal mine goes ahead, a third runway, and the biggest gas-fired power station in Europe, and goes even further than that and proposes cutting the tiny amount of tax on domestic flights in order to make it cheaper to fly within this huge country we live in called Britain. And so, you've got this incredible disconnect between what they say on the one hand and what they do on the other. And maybe that is well explained by the fact that they are in hock to big business and fossil fuel interests.
But he told us this.
Britain was the first major economy in the world, let alone the EU, to place upon our own shoulders a legal obligation to be carbon neutral by 2050. That will put huge strains on our system.
Are you saying then, Dale, that you don't believe him?
This is Boris Johnson, isn't it? I mean, he's got form, you know what I mean?
Isn't there a certain kind of there's a certain kind of politician, but there's a certain kind of, particularly a conservative politician, just but by dint, it's not having a pop at the Tories, it's just by dint of the fact they've always been the party that is more associated with business, who cannot get their head around that something might be greater than the business deal. They simply can't surmount that hurdle, that there could be another way of doing something, that it's possible that another policy could usurp whatever the business interest is, and they genuinely are so wedded to, it's in their DNA, I think, Dale.
Mm. Well, two things here, I think. One is, I think they're inherently corrupt. A story came out yesterday about a civil servant that was responsible for government procurement. And while he was doing that job, he took a job with Greensill, the company that just went bankrupt that David Cameron was pimping to the Chancellor. He took a job with them, and they're in the business of procurement, and an incredible conflict of interest that the government didn't seem to worry about. I think they're inherently corrupt. I think they confuse business and making money, and they think that making money is business. That's fine. But the second thing I think is this, that if we can get to a place where these people can see the environment as a business opportunity, then we're going to win.
Yep. Let's have a question. Sam on Twitter said, have you slipped something into Mike Graham's coffee? I can't believe he's not doubting Seaspiracy. A great interview, and love the podcast. This was last Friday, wasn't it? You were on Talk Radio with Mike. Because he'd seen Seaspiracy on Netflix and thought, I like this, and then realized that you were one of the producers and thought, we've got to talk about this, and he's kind of converted.
Well, we had a fantastic conversation. I have to say, I shared that surprise as well. I expected him to lob in the odd hand grenade of skepticism. I mean, that's what I've experienced before. And there are people questioning elements of Seaspiracy, so I expected that, but it didn't come. Mike was overwhelmingly positive about the film and the horror story that it shows about what's happening in the oceans. And he said he's not giving up fish yet, but he's kind of on the path. And I thought that was a massive thing.
Here's another story. France banning short domestic flights. And I would imagine, Dale, you would see this as incredibly good news.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. And it's in stark contrast to Britain making them cheaper. It doesn't get any clearer than that, does it? But what they've done is to ban domestic flights where there's a train journey that can be done in 2.5 hours or less, which makes a great deal of sense. And, and that's most of Britain, isn't it? Well, it's a lot of Britain.
Yeah, you think so?
Wouldn't. But fair play to the French, I say.
Mia on Facebook says, really enjoyed your interview with Krishnan on Channel 4's Ways to Change the World podcast. I'm now working my way through your podcast series. What's the best advice you can give to a vegetarian like me who has long thought about going vegan? Because it's often said that the jump from vegetarian to vegan is bigger than the jump from meat eater to vegetarian.
Yeah. And I don't think that it is, because, I think it boils down to milk and dairy offshoots of milk, like cheese, obviously, and eggs, chicken periods. And if you think about these products, where they come from, what they really are, and the health impacts of eating them, and the animal impacts as well, I don't think it's a difficult step. But also, of course, the alternatives now in the world of plant milks and cheese, for example, they're fantastic and they're everywhere. So I think it's easier than it's ever been to make that simple step and just, leave dairy alone.
Did you go straight to vegan, or did you do the vegetarian thing first?
Yeah, I did the vegetarian thing first, just stopped eating meat. And, I didn't think there was a problem with cheese because I didn't know better. I didn't know how milk was made. And I mean, it's a brutal industry, truly brutal. And same with the egg laying industry. And I didn't know better. But when I did know better, I stopped. And in terms of food choice, it's not a big thing to give up, but the alternatives now also mean you don't actually have to give it up.
Yeah,
you just bung a plant version in.
That's true. And what about the chicken thing seems to. There's a bit of a debate there. If you have a chicken in your own back garden, it lays eggs. The chicken doesn't die, so why can't you eat the egg?
I wouldn't say anybody can't eat the egg. For me, it's just a revolting concept, actually, to eat this egg that comes out of a chicken's butt. Who wants to do that?
Yeah.
But it is a victimless crime, you could say, because chickens will just lay eggs anyway.
And then there's we talked about the roadkill thing, which there are a couple of kind of people who live off the land nomadic characters that live in woods and tents, and they do exist in very small numbers in this country, but, won't eat meat. But if there's a rabbit that's been hit by a car, they will eat that because that doesn't come under the same category. I know you wouldn't do that because you're back to what you find unpalatable. But is there, in principle, anything wrong with that?
No, I don't think so, because again, it's a victimless crime. For me, it would be unpalatable, and I'd find the idea just so grim. I couldn't swallow. I might be able to chew, but I couldn't swallow. I don't think I could even chew it actually. But that's just where I am. But I don't think there's any harm in roadkill. But at the same time, there's not a lot of point in it in a way. I mean, it's not an answer to this issue of having to give up eating animals. It's just a kind of very niche, very fringe thing that a handful of people do. And yeah, who cares? I say good luck.
Can you remember the last time did you remember the last piece of meat you ate? I mean, was there a moment when you said, right, that's it, none of this old shit anymore?
No, I don't remember it. I would have been a teenager, definitely, because it was the moment I left home that I just never ate it again because I was buying my own food, and the choice was then in my hands completely.
What about this then? On a connected theme, a vegan student completing an animal management course claims she was told she would need to visit a farm or fail. She said that she complained undertaking the farming unit as part of the national qualifications course was incompatible with her beliefs.
Yeah, I just heard this story this morning, and my first reaction was, "What's a vegan doing on an animal husbandry course?" I mean, I have no idea. And my second thought was, look, actually, everybody should be made to visit an abattoir before they're allowed to eat meat. Actually, should be that way around.
Fair point. Laura on Twitter, will you be looking for more land for nature after you've helped with the RSPB?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we did our first rewilding project about 20 years ago. We've got a second piece of land that we're lining up to do something with, and we're scouting at the moment for other projects that we can get involved in. So yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be the kind of next big thing that I get into rewilding. I'm really quite excited about it and quite passionate about.
Were you out doing something this week, rewilding wise?
Oh yeah, we popped down to the New Forest with the Express and the RSPB, and we visited Horse Common, this piece of land that we're trying to buy in conjunction with the Express for the RSPB. And we shot some videos and visited the site, just kind of got a feel for what's going to happen there. It's fantastic. So we're going to post some videos tomorrow, actually, around that.
Good work. Now let's talk about food. Seagrass. You and I had a brief conversation on email last night about this, because I hear of seagrass. I don't really know much about it, but it's being called the rice of the sea.
Yeah, I mean, this element of seagrass is new to me. Seagrass is new to me anyway. I bumped into it just a few weeks ago, and it looks like a kind of seaborne version of land rewilding. The idea of sowing seagrass around the coast of Britain, for example, and all coasts around the world, is a fantastic plant and creates awesome habitats, and it's like really exciting in its own right. But this chef in Spain has gone further, and he spent a lot of time cultivating seagrass and creating recipes, and he's also done some kind of analysis of the nutritional benefits of the rice or the grain that grows at the base of seagrass. And basically, it turns out it's an amazing food source. It's got twice the protein content of rice. It's got half the yield per hectare, but you put nothing into it, no pesticides, no fertilizers, no irrigation. You just plant it. He's done it in an old salt marsh, and the seagrass has absolutely brought the environment back to life with seahorses and scallops and all kinds of stuff. And so it just looks like an amazing opportunity to feed the world. Also, seagrass at the moment absorbs 10% of the ocean's carbon, but it only covers 0.2% of the area of the ocean. So it really is outperforming everything else. It's got something like 35 times the capacity of absorbing carbon than a rainforest has. So, it just looks like a wonder food and tool for fighting the climate crisis and rewilding the oceans.
That's incredible. What's not to like, that phrase?
Yeah, what's not to like? Yeah. Sorry.
The perfect entity to be discussing, and hopefully we'll hear more about it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's amazing. And I don't know if there was a typo in the article I read, but this guy's based in Cadiz, and it said that there was only 4 square meters of seagrass left in the entire bay. That sounds too small to be feasible, but it's in decline all around the world, and bringing it back is a great rewilding thing. And if we can feed ourselves as well and absorb carbon, I mean, as you say, yeah, what's not to like? It's super exciting. I want to get to Spain now and try it.
Yeah, absolutely. I spotted this one on Twitter from a Tranmere Rovers fan who said, knowing Dale Vince, he'll hire someone with success on the Football Manager game for his club. Football's biggest joke. I don't know if he's talking about you or the game.
I have no idea either. But look,
You don't sound perturbed either way, to be honest. What's he referring to here?
We ended our time with our head coach last week. We'd been together 5 years. We had 4-game back-to-back defeat. In 10 games, we've slidden from nearly the top of the league to nearly being dumped out of the playoffs. And his contract ran out in the summer anyway. So all these elements were in the mix of our thinking at the weekend. We've got 6 games to go to save our season. So we said, look, let's just call time early, about a month early, and let's get a new head coach, because the one thing that you can almost count on in football is that when you change your coach, you get a bit of a lift out of your team. It's like starting with a slightly blank sheet of paper. You ease all of the kind of tensions and pressures that may have existed before in a team. Often it's the last thing you can do to improve performance. So we took that option, and we're recruiting now, and we've got about 100 CVs to choose from. I don't think I've seen one from somebody that plays Football Manager, by the way.
I did see a story in The Guardian that could it be that you appoint the first female manager?
Yeah, absolutely, it could. I mean, we had a couple of, one in particular, great CV on that front. Turns out that it wasn't sent with the knowledge of the person involved. We've had a good conversation about that, but we were super excited about that, and I think it could well have happened. But we've got 100 in total. I think later today we're going to create a short list of 10, and by this time next week we should be down to a proper short list of 3, and we see where we land. But in the meantime, we've got a guy called Jimmy Ball from our under-18s taking the team for the next 6 games, and we're in a good place. It's a shot to nothing for us. Our form has been so awful; it can't get worse. And
what happens there? Because we all, if you follow, whether you're a Chelsea fan, Forest Green Rovers, whoever you follow, you think, hang on a second, why did I watch a team do this for several weeks and then stopped doing this for several weeks? What do you think happens there?
Well, I mean, that's the $1 million question of football. That's the magic of coaching and running a club and setting a team up on a match day to get a result, because you've got so many variables. You've got variables within your own squad, the team that you're facing as well. You've got injuries, you've got events on the day that you can't control, like referee decisions and injuries, in fact.
True.
There are just so many variables in football, which is why it's pretty unpredictable, and it's so engaging, I think, to so many people.
Let's talk paint, because I saw this story. I just thought this was incredible. The whitest ever paint has been produced. And I saw that. I thought, well, that's incredible. The whitest ever. White isn't white. There are gradients of white. But actually, there's an environmental imperative to this story. Yeah,
it's whiter than snow, apparently. And it's being touted as a material we can use to paint roofs. I mean, roofs are painted white anyway at the moment to reflect sunlight, but this has special properties. It doesn't just reflect sunlight, it reflects UV. And so a conventionally white painted roof cannot be cooler than the ambient temperature due to the painting of the roof. But with this paint, it can be. And the calculations these guys have made show that on a typical house, if you paint the roof white, you get a cooling effect equivalent to 10 kilowatts of air conditioning. Which is a massive air conditioner for a domestic house. So it's like a super exciting prospect, actually, a fairly kind of, I was going to say, natural way to cool buildings, but compared to burning energy, it will be. And estimates of the global potential are somewhere around 600 million tons of CO2 a year saved by painting roofs white with this new paint.
Huge difference. Final question. It's back to football. Austin on Facebook, another podcast fan from the States. He says, I'm a Forest Green Rovers supporter in Ohio. Please give me some hope for the rest of our season, please. We've kind of touched on that, and maybe Jimmy is the man to instill some of that hope. Let's put all the pressure onto him.
Yeah, Jimmy's having a good time. He's not feeling the pressure. He's got a great opportunity, the same as we have. We've all got a shot to nothing here, and this is the best thing that we could do. And we've seen a reaction on the training ground already. We've still got the same players that got us to where we are. Up at the top end of the league, they're still here. That hasn't changed. Something has, and this way, hopefully, we can just push all that to one side and play good football, get some results, and we've still got a shot at promotion.
Good work. That's it from this episode. Have a cracking week, Dale. We'll speak in 7 days.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ian.
Don't forget, of course, to follow this podcast from your podcast provider. That means you get each new episode automatically. It just drops straight into your system on a weekly basis. Do leave a review there as well. It's always rather helpful. You can get in touch, zerocarbonista@ecotricity.co.uk or via social media, and make sure you're following Dale on social media, which is twitter.com/DaleVince or facebook.com/DaleVince.
Zero Carbon
East of